Good evening and welcome to this installment of the Port of Cascade Locks Commission meeting. It is April 15th, about 6 p.m. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
President Lorraine.
Here.
Vice President Clute.
Here.
Commissioner Nance. Oh, Commissioner Nance is excuse me. Commissioner Peterson.
Here.
Commissioner Dodd.
Here.
All right. Modifications, additions, and changes to the agenda.
There are none this evening.
Excellent. Consent agenda, approval of minutes for commission meeting from March 18, 2025, ratification of bills in the amount of $254,386.15. Approval of payroll for March 19th, 2025 in the amount of $31,964.80. And for April 4th, 2025 in the amount of $35,329.35.
I move to approve.
Okay, there's been a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as stated. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Public comment. Are there anybody, nobody here, anybody out there in TV land that wishes to make a comment? All right, seeing none. Special presentations, reports for outside resources, staff, government officials. Bridge of the Gods update, David McCurry.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, I can.
Those on the phone, can you hear me okay?
A bunch of thumbs up.
All right, good.
Oh, thank you.
All right, I'm joining the meeting. I'm going to share my screen and run through a quick presentation
That's much better, thank you.
and encourage you to speak up since I won't be able to see you. Unfortunately, you're behind me. So do speak up if you have a question. I don't mind if you interrupt me. This presentation is just going to have two parts. One is going to be a quick update on the status of the project, just kind of where we are. And then I have a little surprise for you at the end. For those who are into history, especially history about the Bridge of the Gods. So not a super long presentation. And if I don't touch on a topic that you're interested in, please feel free to ask me before we're done here. And I think I can share my screen, right?
You can't. I thought I said that.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. All right, so quickly, I'm just gonna quickly run through, this is the same information that I share every time, so if anything gets caught up, let me know. So just real quick, happy tax day for those who filed their taxes a long time ago and forgot.
Not owing anything is a good inducement.
Yeah.
To finish your taxes.
Yeah, so I'm just, there's really 5 parts to this presentation: the normal dashboards, some key updates, talk about some of the challenges and successes and next steps, and then the end of it is where I'll talk about the historical research and stuff that we've been doing. So just a quick update on where we are overall. No surprises here. We now this is through the end of March. We've spent about 18.2% of the authorized budget on the project so far, and that's everything that has been occurring all in. So there is still some funds set aside for potential future work. So honestly, that is just pretty status quo. All tasks are actively moving forward, and by tasks, I mean the 10 ways we broke up the work that we're doing on the project. And then we have 7 core sort of key milestones for the project that are deliverables to the port currently. And of those, 3 are in progress. 1 is actually finished, and I'll share that. And then 3 more, it's not started because there's other things we have to do first. So no real issues there. In terms of the plan for the current scope of services that we're working on, in terms of schedule, we're about 30% of the way through the schedule and about 18 to 19% complete in terms of the work itself. So that may feel like at first blush we're behind, but we're not, because it usually takes time to ramp up. And then through the middle of the project, usually you're making pretty good progress. And then as you get near the end, you sort of taper off. So we're actually right on schedule, right on plan. I put together a couple of additional pie charts and graphs just to kind of give you a sense as to where we are. So of all the steps, I call them deliverables, all the little memos and reports and sort of check the box things that we're doing. There's really 45 sort of steps that lead into the 7 milestone deliverables. So of those, 14 are in progress, 22 are not started because again, they're waiting for something else. And then 9 are complete. So that gives you a kind of a deeper lens into sort of the more micro steps of the progress of the project. And then on the right is the overall progress in terms of just budget. And you can see the orange solid is what we have done. And then the blue is the projected, what we estimate the continued effort of the project to be for the current scope of services. And again, that's only through what's been authorized. So that's all the different things we're doing currently, not the things that still could be done in the future with the total funds that the state of Oregon has authorized. So that's good. Nothing real exciting here, nothing really new, because sometimes no news is good news. Everything's moving forward pretty well. Really, honestly, no changes in terms of the any of the tasks in terms of budget or risk or any issues with scope, things being out of scope, no quality problems. I highlighted in green and bold on the right there are 1 milestone deliverable that we've achieved. And it's not the kind of deliverable that's like a report. It's all this surveying and mapping has been completed now.
Cool.
And so we're actively using that to design, to analyze the bridge, the geotechnical and all the pedestrian, bike, ADA, and other things on either side of the bridge. I'll call them the bridge heads or bridge approaches, if you will.
So the LiDAR is not just the bridge, it's also the ground?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the LiDAR is a combination of the scan from the drone,
Yeah.
which we scan the bridge, the piers, and the land in the water. Put an asterisk there for a second.
Yeah.
The mapping, so we physically had surveyors go out and actually tie that LiDAR to their physical field survey, like a traditional equipment field survey.
Cool.
And that's all now together in 1 model. And it's the approaches, it's the toll house road, it's the land around the bridge, about 200 foot wide for the entire width of the bridge on both sides, and the interchange in SR14 and all that stuff. Super useful data for all kinds of reasons. And it'd be useful for a number of years in the future.
Great.
If it wants to be used again.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of where we are. And then again, this is just the same schedule. I made a few tweaks here. I kind of simplified. I was mixing the term milestones, so I simplified the blue diamonds here. The blue diamonds are really just, we'll call them key completion dates or milestones or items, I'll call them for now. It just gives you a sense as to how everything sort of overlaps and how long will this take and where are we on the schedule of things. It's kind of just a high level snapshot of the schedule. So you can see we completed the survey and mapping, and the next thing that we do intend to complete is the bridge drawing set. I'm not going to bore you with that today because it's about 30 plus drawings right now of the bridge, the drawings that we didn't have. And that's quite useful in terms of current analysis as well as any future plans. Imagine if you wanted to widen the bridge or put a pit bike on the side. We need those drawings to be able to do that. So that's the schedule.
Question real quick.
Yeah.
On that, I see a minor milestone for funding and grants.
Yeah.
And I see that we've gone past the green one. What was the green one?
Yeah, I actually I actually modified that, Todd, because I think that was, sorry, Ted, I'm sorry. That was a little confusing. So the real milestone for funding and grants is the grant funding plan. We actually did have a workshop
Yeah.
where we talked about what are the potential funding opportunities. There's quite a few out there. A lot of them are tied to federal funds. So there's a number of steps along the way, deliverables, we'll call them, to get to that grant and funding plan, but that's still a work in progress. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so again, a couple key updates. Field survey and drone scan is done. We have a 3D model of the physical world, the slopes of the ground, the railroad. We can use that model for all kinds of things for design and for construction eventually. Internal workshop on funding, as I just mentioned, we held a small workshop to talk about what's possible, what's out there, and really start to think about if the board is interested in pursuing additional funding from external sources, what kind of projects would we actually be able to align with that funding opportunity? So, for example, is putting lighting on the bridge, is there a funding or grant opportunity out there where the board could seek that grant and get some funds to be able to do that? Another example is ped bike, any kind of ped bike improvement. There's a lot of grant opportunities out there, and Genevieve is pretty aware of a lot of these things too. So we're starting to tie together the physical improvements that are needed on the bridge and off the bridge, approaching the bridge, and how we could actually go after a grant or package things in a way we maybe piece together a lot of improvements without just going in with like a huge ask to the states or the feds along the way. So lots more to come on that later. I'm not gonna spend too much time on that now, but I'm happy to answer questions. There's actually quite a bit of work being done behind the scenes on that, but we're not like ready for that to be a focus today. We do have a structural health monitoring plan. It's ready to go. So what that again is putting strain gauges and all kinds of cool gadgets on the bridge to measure what's happening to the bridge on a day-to-day basis, where we can literally tell, hey, a truck went by, this was the weight of the truck, and this is how the bridge responded to that weight in terms of what's the stress in the bridge. We can then take that information and translate that to a lot of different things. Lifespan of the bridge, and any, all kinds of things associated with structural analysis and determining what's the right thing to do in terms of retrofit on the bridge. So there's quite a bit that's coming there in the future. I'll spend a lot more time on that later too, because those field installations are coming up pretty soon. And then the field boring plan, which doesn't sound very exciting, I get it. I know. So, and I'll talk here about that in a second. So a little bit of a downer here. Still, we do not have, as of today, I haven't given up hope. The existing main span steel truss fabrication detailed drawings. We still don't have. However, I have a pretty good lead, and we still have there's still some glimmer of hope. Regardless, we're still building the drawing set from the information we have from the scan of the drones, more of the ODOT did a few years ago, and some drawings. So
those come from core engineers.
So it's interesting. I'll mention that I've actually done quite a bit of research to all kinds of different archival systems. Washington State has probably 4 or 5 big archive systems. They're not all interconnected, and Oregon has probably 2/3 as many. For example, Oregon Historical Society, they have historic records. Museum of History and Industry in Seattle, they have records. Corps of Engineers definitely had a report, and you might remember I mentioned that report a while back.
There was some,
pretty excited.
Difference between what they said they did and what actually appears to have happened.
And weirdly enough, that's actually not the only time that we have found old drawings, some of which the port has. So Parker gave me some drawings, I had them scanned. One was different than we've seen before, and actually the most accurate depiction of the concrete piers out there. But another one was kind of a representation of what might have happened but didn't actually happen.
I talked to a guy this week that he spent his whole career basically structural welding and building, stacks of drawings, and he said there's a big disconnect between the engineers and what the engineers actually know and what actually happens both in the field and or when the people who actually build it actually have to build it, they say, well, you can't do it that way, and they make changes midway because
Mhm.
it looks great on paper, but it's not deliverable.
Mm.
So, you know,
Yeah.
I can see something like that happening because you pretty
Yeah.
much said it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Brad, that's exactly it. Like you couldn't have said that any better. And so what we have to do is we have to take the drawings and then look at the drone scan and video and pictures and say, okay, is that what actually happened? And there's a number of drawings that they look pretty official. They're signed and everything. The Army Corps of Engineers had a report on how to raise the Bridge of the Gods, but it's not how they did it.
Mm.
And we're figuring this out by looking at the different drawings and the archives. And I'll show you here at the end historic photos.
I know
So-
another guy who
Yeah.
basically was a steel estimator, and he said the same thing.
Yeah.
He said there's a big disconnect between engineers, architects who don't really live in the real world.
Yeah.
And he would constantly change things.
Yeah.
When it went to bidding the steel and changing things because he said it just, you know, wasn't possible.
It, at best, owners like say ODOT or WashDOT, they will try to do as-built drawings. More recently, they've done a better job of that. One of the first things I ever did in my career was go to ODOT's office in Salem and help them clean up their as-built archives. But the problem with the Bridge of the Gods is we don't even have the drawings. So what you're actually talking about is exactly right. We don't have that steel fabricator's detailed drawings of where did every rivet go and what was everything really made of, what was the shape of the plates and thickness of the steel members. We don't have that. And we're collecting that with the data we have and recreating our understanding. Later in the summer, we're actually going to do a field visit where we'll go out and actually measure a few things that we just don't quite know yet. If we were to find the drawings, that would be very telltale because the actual steel fabrication drawings is what, you know, it's what they literally used in the shop to fabricate that piece of steel and drill that hole and, you know, deliver to the site. So that's exactly right. So I'll move forward a little more quickly now. That's the bullet there, varying and contradictory historical information. Why it matters is because the condition the bridge is in today affects the stresses and strains in the bridge, and that affects the work that we do in determining, you know, the lifespan of the bridge and its ability to carry weight, additional weight, really, is what we're looking at. We also have a very limited understanding of underwater condition, and I'll get to that in a second. However, and I'll finish up here at the end, we did find some new records that Port didn't have, and I don't think anybody really knew existed until we dug deep enough. And I'll share that here in a second. Yeah, so Brad, you kind of stole my thunder, third bullet here. We have a much better detailed understanding now, not only of the timeline of how the bridge was built and raised, but then what actual details did they use in the bridge? So for example, the pier, what's inside, like what's inside the concrete? Like we know now, because we have these staged drawings of the piers, because for example, the pier that's the first pier in the river by the Oregon side, that's by the railroad, was built in 3 stages. There was an initial build, and we actually have dimensions and drawings for that. And then there was a second build, and then when they raised the bridge, there was a third build. So knowing what's inside, the steel that's inside there, which we now know, we know how strong it is and how it can resist earthquake forces. That's what it really boils down to. So this is kind of what's coming now is the underwater inspections. So there's 3 parts to that, which are going to be super interesting. Hydrographic survey, that's just about mapping the riverbed under the bridge around the piers. They just run some scanning equipment from a boat and they scan the river bottom. I don't know what's down there. I don't know how deep it is. We don't really know the answer to that question right now. We have a general idea, but we don't really know exactly. And that affects the geotechnical work that we do. They're also going to scan the underwater pier, and we're going to send some divers down if it's safe around the piers to do some hands-on video and inspection. The hands-on video and inspection is probably cool for the diver, but it actually doesn't give you as much information as you would hope because it's kind of murky and swift, and it's hard to get a good kind of picture of what's really down there. The blue view imaging sonar survey, that will give us like an underwater picture of the pier, and I'll just move forward. It'll kind of look like this. This is the university Street Bridge in Seattle. University Avenue, excuse me. And this is what is underwater that you just wouldn't know. Why does it matter? Well, if it's decayed or missing something, or there's a big scour hole, and if you're curious, go stand out by the bridge on the Oregon side in that little viewing area. And if you look at the river, you can actually see these big sort of turbulent pools around the backside of the pier on the downstream side.
Yeah.
And so that creates scour holes at the edges of piers. So we want to know what that looks like adjacent to the pier. So we're going to get something like this that's coming in the future, and then this. So first of all, this is just a preliminary idea and understanding of what's down under the bridge. And this is what the geotechs do, is they go out and they do studies of old data, and they do new borings down in the ground, and they figure out what's down there. Is it rock? Is it something else? So currently we have a plan. There's 5 potential borings, so drilling down, 2 in the water, which we probably won't do because we don't think we have to have them right now. So we're going to hold off, and they're expensive. So we're just going to wait on that. That doesn't make a ton of sense. But boring 1, boring 4, and boring 5, which on the left side of the image here, boring 1 is in the Washington sort of dirt area around the bridge there. We're going to take that down, and we're going to hopefully, but maybe not, find the bottom of the Bonneville landslide.
Okay.
If we're lucky, we will. If we don't, we'll probably get deep enough to know how the earthquake will affect the bridge. Essentially, that's what that boils down to. When there's an earthquake, how does the ground shake to shake the bridge? It's quite useful information in terms of figuring out the foundation performance and just the bridge behavior during an earthquake. Anyway, if you can see the coloring here, so on the left side, the Bonneville landslide deposit. So there's been a lot of studies done in the past about what happened in the Bonneville landslide. And if you remember, basically a huge chunk of the mountain, a couple chunks of the mountain over time, it's a complex of landslides. Eventually, one big one came all the way across and blocked the river. And what geologists believe happened was that landslide deposit went all the way across the river, like all the way, and pushed all the way across. And so today, if you were to do a boring like this shown here in this drawing, on the left side, you would pretty much just be in the Bonneville landslide deposit for hundreds of feet deep. Crazy enough. But down on the right side is Oregon, and the purple is like a more competent foundational material. And it's expected to be quite a bit shallower. Now, there's also other landslides on the Oregon side historically. There's a lot of mapped data around the periphery of Cascade Locks that has landslide data. And so on the Oregon side, we do expect to find shallower sort of rock foundation. We're hoping that under the pier that I mentioned earlier that's on the Oregon side, we'll find some really good competent material. That would be great. So anyway, this is just a quick snapshot of what the geotechnical borings, where they are, and then what information they'll provide us and sort of why it matters, which I can dig into that further if you'd like. But
How deep do they go on those borings?
yeah, I quizzed our geotech and drillers pretty carefully to make sure that we're balancing the effort that we're going to put into this versus what we're going to get back. And the answer to your question is 200 feet. And they can go 300, 350 feet without much more effort, just takes a little bit more time. For context, as part of the IDR I-5 crossing bridge replacement that's going on, they did go down like 350 feet. We typically don't go that deep. Typically, it's for small bridges, it's maybe only 100 feet. So the 200 feet here is, hey, we don't know we're going to actually hit the competent material. By that, I mean really bedrock. We think we're just going to be going through landslide deposit material, which has only been there since 1476. That's our best estimate. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
Roughly 1476. That big landslide's been there only since then, which means it's kind of loose material compared to bedrock. So in other words, when the ground shakes, it shakes a bit more than bedrock shake. So anyway, so yeah, 200 feet. Yeah. And I asked him, what if we don't hit the nice competent material in 200 feet?
You need really long bolts.
But we don't have to go down this. Yeah, that's a good question. We don't have to go down that far if we put a new foundation in necessarily, right? But we need to know what that soil profile looks like so that if we do need to go in with new foundation, we know how deep we need to go. So we have to kind of go past where the foundation would go. So we know what's below the foundation. Yeah. Good question.
And that would be for any scenario, phase one seismic, phase two seismic and replacement? Would that be all the borings that we would need?
So this is a much more targeted plan for mostly this project.
Okay,
Typically, when you do go like a full bridge replacement, you do these borings preliminarily, and then you kind of come
Go
up with
back.
a concept for a new bridge.
yeah,
And then you say, okay, now I think my foundation is gonna go here, and then you actually go out and do borings at that location.
okay,
So this is really useful information to understand the existing bridge just as it is. And then we can look at, well, okay, what is the earthquake gonna do to the bridge because of the soil profile under the bridge? And then, okay, what could we do? Maybe new foundations around the existing foundations. And that would help strengthen the bridge.
okay,
So it's kind of like, it's very useful for this project.
okay,
And it provides a pretty good insight into, like, we're gonna go out and do other borings in the future where you might wanna put them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically it determines the size and depth of the footings.
Yeah.
Of the bridge.
Yeah.
Might have to get much bigger
Might have to
footing
get
if
wider.
the soil's not as stable and.
Yeah. Yeah, and in this project, most likely what would end up happening in the future, we're talking years down the line now, is drill shaft foundations where we go out with, huge drill rigs that just drill a huge 10-foot diameter steel casing down through the river bottom, as deep as we calculate they need to be. They end up becoming fairly, they're usually just round, deep drilled shafts. That's what's happening on Abernathy, although
yeah, I was gonna
for
say, I think
context,
we
they're going-
saw that, yeah,
Yeah.
you can see that at the Abernathy.
those are actually going quite a bit deeper than this. The situation there is different than this.
Okay.
This river has seen just a lot of geologic things that have happened compared to the Lamb River. So, so that was a pretty deep dive. I think that was my 20 minutes. So anyway, I'll skip over this because we kind of already talked about it, but there's things coming out in May and June that will be physical in the field things. So now I have some fun things for you here, and I'll go through this kind of quickly, but it's an interesting story because I probably have talked to 5 or 6 different archives. And this photo that you see here came from Oregon Historical Society, and I don't know that it was new. But I ordered some photos from Oregon Historical Society, just like 4 photos. They said, I'd love high resolution images of those. And then there was a little bit of snafu with ordering them, and so it kind of got delayed a couple of weeks. So this is now getting about a month old. But then when I got the photos, I was like, well, these are kind of interesting. I'm not sure I've seen all of these. In particular, on the left, there's this Washington Pier construction. In the middle is like somebody took an aerial from an airplane of the bridge before the dams were put in. All these pictures are before the dam was put in. And on the right was this photo that I'd seen a portion of or a lower resolution image of. And it kind of sparked my interest. And so I said, let's take a closer look at that one. And again, what's eluded us this whole time is who actually designed the bridge and who actually built the bridge. We had believed the Wana Toll Company, which is just a rich family in Walla Walla, started up a company called the Wana Toll Company and financed the project. But they didn't actually build the bridge. They contracted out to somebody to actually build the bridge. So I was looking at this photo, and sure enough, on the right side over here, and there's a lot that I can say about this photo, but on the right, there was a sign.
Oh, look at that.
And sure enough, Puget Sound Bridge and Dredging Company, engineering and construction, Portland, Vancouver, Seattle. I thought, well, that's a pretty good lead from the Oregon Historical Society.
Very cool.
And they were on my radar for potentially having designed and constructed this, but we didn't really know. There was nothing in the Wana Toll Company records in Walla Walla that said anything about this company. So I went up to Seattle. Actually, I was already talking to him, so I kind of chatted with him back and forth. And I said, do you have anything there that's on the Bridge of the Gods? Nothing digital. So there were some folders and a couple boxes of some stuff. Oh, all right, I'll come up there and take a peek. So I took a trip to Seattle. I'd actually been here before, this museum. I'd actually talked to them already, and they were like, nah, we don't have anything. So I was digging deeper through their records, and I'm like, there's a folder here, and it says Wana Toll Company, and we got to take a look, right? So go up there, and found out more about this Puget Sound Bridge and Dredging Company. If you're a history buff, basically the story goes like this. They built ships in World War One, and then World War One ended. And then in between World War One and World War Two, they did things in the US like build bridges and dredge to help build up Seattle. This particular company actually helped build Harbor Island, which, if you know, Seattle is a huge shipping area right now. And historically, it was actually where they built a lot of ships, especially during World War II. Eventually, it got bought by the Lockheed Company and sort of dissolved. The Lockheed Company portion of the shipbuilding dissolved and ceased in 1987. But there are some archives. So, in my search, I found this cool photo on the left, and you can see the same sign: Puget Sound Bridge and Dredging, Engineering Construction. So this was the office where I believe there's a high probability the Bridge of the Gods was designed and managed, and the construction was figured all out here. Incidentally, on the right, I was curious, where is this? It's 10th Avenue South in Dearborn in Seattle, which is smack in the middle of I-5.
Oh, wow.
So this building does not exist in any form or fashion. So that's kind of an interesting find.
That
I
is
just thought that
interesting.
was. And sure enough, I went there to the Museum of History and Industry, and there's a little binder, or a little folder really, of what essentially was some bridge builders. I call them trophies because I keep these too. They're pictures of something you did. You built a bridge, you designed a bridge, you saw it up during construction, and sure enough, there's these really old photos of many steps in the construction of the Bridge of the Gods.
Cool.
And so, I mean, I've never seen these before. There's a number of these that tell quite a story in terms of how it was built. Now, again, this was in 1925, 26. So it wasn't the raising of the bridge. This was the original building of the bridge. And it tells us how, I mean, I'll maybe do a little history presentation later on, but it tells us how the stresses were locked in and how it was, constructed, which is really important. There was a binder as well. This is interesting, a binder, or really a scrapbook essentially of old articles of all the different bridges that the Puget Sound Bridge and Dredging Company had built throughout the Northwest, a number of bridges, So anyway, I think they bought the San Francisco Bridge Company at some point, or at least took over their Northwest operations based out of Seattle. And I did find the same photo that I found with the Oregon Historical Society. It's different in its resolution. I think that it's somehow or another, the same photo made its way to Oregon and to Seattle somehow. I mean, this was in whoever owned this little binder of pictures. So super cool. And this is only one of the many pictures in there. I kind of zoomed in. There's a lot you can see here. So basically, we knew they probably shipped the steel by rail. So they shipped the steel to the site, and then they built like a separate little rail path to get to the bridge and brought the steel pieces from the main railroad to the bridge. Interesting fact. And I mean, this picture tells 1,000 things about how they went about the construction of the bridge. I thought it'd be interesting just to share.
That's cool.
This shows you how they started from the Oregon side. So basically they built a bridge from what's now the pier with the mural on it. And they built it out. And if you can you see the cursor there? Maybe?
Yep.
A little bit. This thing sticking up here is just a bunch of timber that's framing that was used to balance, cantilever, construct the bridge. So basically what you see built right now becomes kind of a backspan weight, and then they proceed to build the bridge out into the river using this backspan counterweight to hold the bridge down so that it doesn't tip in the river. That's how it's done. That's how the Bridge of the Gods came to be. And we kind of knew that was how it would be done, but there's a lot of little details in how they assembled this that are actually quite useful. Yeah, so this is just a small collection of the pictures that I took, and the high resolution scans are being worked on right now. So we'll get those pretty soon.
Okay.
Yeah, so End of the story, maybe real quick, is I'm not sure the story's all done. If you go watch the YouTube video, I have my own little sort of conspiracy theory that the Puget Sound Bridge and Dredging Company maybe worked with the nearby Wallace Bridge and Construction Company because they're both located in the same place. And I previously mentioned that in the YouTube video, there was a little, somebody wrote on one of the steel members something Seattle, Washington, and you can't really tell. But the archive people agree with me that it looks like it says Wallace Company. So, and on the left is the actual yard in Seattle. This is a historic photo of steel bridge trusses being built in Seattle at the Wallace Bridge Company. And then I stumbled across an interesting fact in that it was named after young Wallace Duffy, who died at a young age of 23 in San Diego. And the father, Duffy, named the Wallace Bridge and Construction Company after his son, Wallace. So the archives, Mohi, as well as University of Washington, is actually looking through their records, see if there's anything else that might actually contain the bridge plans. So I think that'll probably be the end of the research, to be honest with you. Like if we don't find them, we just don't find them. But that was a pretty deep dive and kind of got us to an interesting place. Yeah. So this, interestingly, is the steel fabricators in Seattle at the Wallace Bridge and Structural Steel Company. And honestly, there's so many people in this photo. I have a strong suspicion that this is actually where the bridge was fabricated, which would have been right next to the Puget Sound Bridge and Dredging Company. So it's a hard thing to tell, but anyway, I thought this was interesting to see like people 100 years ago, 1930,
Yeah,
who probably had some hand in building the bridge.
that's cool.
Pretty cool.
Anyway, there's your deep dive on history. I'm
Very
done.
cool.
Any questions?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Anybody have any questions, out to that?
Oh, it was just a really cool presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean it's the port's bridge and it has an incredible history by itself. So does the canal, the locks, but it's interesting how we live in these little windows and there's all these things that happen long before we're here.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Really good stuff.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
All right, commissioner comments. Let's start out TV land. Rob, Gary, do you have any?
No big updates on my end. Just working on putting together a task list for the Bridge of the Gods celebration committee. We're meeting again this Thursday, so hoping to have it as an active working session to put together a list of all the tasks that we want or need to progress this project. We've narrowed down the scope of the party to, mostly just a music festival, not music, but like a music and arts festival with a beer garden, your typical fest with bungee jumping. So that will be fun. But, we had all of these ideas for air shows and car shows and whatnot, but the capacity to be able to do that is very limited on our end. So the scope has been narrowed quite a bit. But I think it'll still be fun overall, a whole weekend of events. So we're moving forward with the task planning on that. And we're going to divide it out between tasks that, we and the port can do versus somebody we may need to hire to kind of wrangle vendors and stuff like that together. So more to come on that, but we are making some progress.
Rob?
And that's all I've got. It doesn't look like Rob is on.
Rob?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Dodd.
Cool. Yeah, a little thing on the mountain biking front. A couple updates. The LapQuest event is scheduled for June 7th, so that's coming. That's going to be an easy climb. 2 weeks prior to that, there's going to be a big clean up, but trail work, but we'll do a lot of cutting back and everything else, and have probably a huge group out doing that. And once that's done, the Easy Climb will be in great shape for the year and also ready for the Lap Quest event. The other thing is the loop. We're completing our winter build session. I should say we, Northwest Airlines, is completing the build session to build that loop that we were doing. So we're close to having that done. And then here's a fun story. I was talking to some riders because, by the way, the ridership is going like this out in that area. It's just spiking. And we've got some trail counters out there in the different locations. We're measuring the number of riders passing certain points so we kind of get an idea of head count, how many people are joining. We're just seeing an upward spike, but when I have a little bit more data, I'll share that, and I think you guys will be really impressed.
Cool.
The other thing is a fun story is that talking to some folks, I've actually found that some people are actually coming out here and using the mass
Nice.
transit. They're making it a family
Nice.
event. They're coming out. I was finding that they're getting on the buses at Gateway Green Transit Center, coming all the way out,
Cool.
spending money in the local establishments, going for a ride, families dividing. The
Do they
dad,
bring their bikes with them then?
yeah, they bring their bikes with them,
Awesome.
and they do some family type of rides.
Cool.
And then a couple of in this case, the dad is going off with his buddies and going on more endurance type of rides. Family goes home and then he catches up with them later. So it's kind of interesting
That's
to hear
cool.
these different stories.
That's great to know
So,
that.
yeah, seems like something else, but that's all I've got at this point.
Awesome. Well, I was commenting both Ted and Jeremiah both and some other folks that the Easy Climb is, and obviously then the other climb trail, which is in progress, is a little known treasure, and we need to advertise it more because we have a great location here, and that trail is amazing. I've been taking the dog out and mentioned that we need to put some doggy bags at the entrances of the trailheads there because I've noticed there are several people who do not bring bags with them when they bring their dog, and so I try to push it into the bushes, away from the edge of the trail. But anyway, but yeah, I think there's some things that we could do to market what we already have just a little bit better. Get some advertising out there, and as Ted was mentioning, there's a lot of people who are coming out and it's spiking, but I think a little bit of advertising would go a long ways with what we already have here. I did speak with Steve Caputo briefly, and he had mentioned that the traffic was up quite a bit. It was a pretty good busy weekend at Sternwheeler and a lot of people down in the park, and man, with everybody who was in town this weekend for the runs, that was amazing to see the town that busy.
Yeah.
And I think that's just going to be, that type of stuff's going to be happening more and more, just regular traffic when the weather gets good. But we're excited about that. But I pretty much don't have anything else. Okay. Executive Director report.
I will kick us off with the events. So yeah, I got a lot of great feedback as well on just how busy town was. I still think there's more room for us to grow that event. I know a lot of it gets focused down at Gorgeous, and Janetta can be credited with creating that relationship between them and Gorgeous. It's an introduction that she's made, and they have certainly run with it. I know some of the other businesses saw some increased traffic from that as well, but I feel like there's other ways to get some of the businesses involved with that particular race. Give me 1 second here. I'm pulling up my director's report. I apologize. Actually, Parker, you want to take your section real quick while I pull it up?
Find my unmute button there. All right. So we've had a big month here in the operations department. I'll go over the big ones here. We welcome Stephen Hamrich to the team as a maintenance worker 1, and he's been nothing but a pleasure to have on the team. Say 1 guy is 1 guy, 2 guys is 2 guys, but 3 guys is like 5 guys. We've been getting a lot of work done. So it's been very nice. We did an in-house fix to the large Kubota mower. Thought we had a starter going out, and John and myself, along with other guys on the team, we were able to get that fixed and figured out in-house without having to buy any parts. It was a big success for us. We've started construction on the House 3 privacy fence for the events coming up in the summer. I responded last weekend to a sewer lift station alarm down at the sewer lift station for Ixtapa, and we had a pipe, a pipe that had burst inside of that. And upon having the sewer lift station repaired on 4/7, those folks realized that their glue was compromised. So that was a installation error that had happened, and we were able to clean that up, and everybody was able to continue working as and all the restaurants stayed open there. We've been working on contract work for the House 3 bathroom remodel. We've burned our burn pile in the business park, got that taken care of, so we're ready for spring. The guys have been edging Marine Park roadways and doing flower beds. If you get a chance, just go have a drive around. Looks great everywhere. We opened the Harvey Road restroom for the season, and we've done some updates to the campground fee schedule, some estimates for the 25-26 budget, and working on the 25-26 budget. Jeremiah, hand it back to you.
Perfect. Another shout out to Janetta on the securing another couple of vendors for the 4th of July. We had a great experience with all the vendors last year. It was the biggest party that we've thrown to date down there, and to add a couple more vendors is just going to include that. Also, all of the work, I think Parker can probably echo me on this, the work that she's done putting the benches together for the new seating out there on the island. Every evening I'm like, where are you going? She's like, going down to the maintenance shop and work on benches. So she's definitely put the effort in there. Genevieve, you want to grab your administrative?
Yeah, just one thing about the benches. I wanted to make sure you all understood the reasoning for this project is a cost saving measure. We have, I think, more than 200 white chairs that after and before every event need to be moved, and is a lot of the hours that makes up the seasonal event staff is moving these chairs. And so this is a aesthetically pleasing and high quality solution to this problem, and it's a cost saving measure. So we're excited about the benches. Just wanted to really quickly just highlight that the McHead's Brownfield Grant Award to the Cascade Inn is still underway, moving forward. The phase 1 environmental has been completed, and they're working on, they want to do a soil vapor test and an asbestos test, and they'll move through that and move on into plans for the demolition of the building. All of our Port of Cascade Locks Economic Development Grant awardees have signed their grant agreements, are fully executed and off to McHead. So everybody's off to the races. We don't have an application for you to review this meeting. There's still around $12,000 left in the fund. So if you hear of any more exciting projects in town, make sure to point them to my direction, and we'll get those get the information to those guys. We did receive notification that our grant to the Port Planning and Marketing Fund for the land use and real estate development plan project was approved. We heard about that before the last meeting, but we were still waiting for the award letter and the contract, and those are coming in. The RFP that will result from that funding has to be approved by Business Oregon before we can send it out. Originally, we had wanted to send that out at the end of March. That's obviously not going to happen, but we're trying to move that project forward as quickly as possible. We also have a couple other grants pending, but we're able to close out and submit our final report and our final reimbursement request today for the Harvey Road restroom project. So that one is done. There's actually two different grants that funded that project, and so we were able to submit the final reports and the final reimbursement requests for those. Let's see, Budget Committee preparations, Carrie Ann has been publishing that, and we've been working with Marina and co staff lots and lots this week on preparation of the budget. Anything else, Jeremiah, you want me to highlight?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that specifically calling out the amount of effort that's gone to the budget across the team in every department it has been a bulk of the work that we've been doing this week, or this month, I should say. We are excited to turn that over to you guys today. We'll have our budget meeting next Tuesday. Thank you, Ted, for correcting me on that. I've been having a small panic attack that it was this Thursday for like a week. I'm thinking I give it to you today and then we're hitting it on Thursday. I couldn't figure out how I screwed that up. Well, I just screwed up the date. So you guys will have time to look at it, which is great. I will be reaching out to each and every one of you during this next week. It's best if we can get together and sit down and look at it. If not, we can do it over Zoom, but it's going to be something where we kind of go through it piece by piece so that you guys can ask questions. And that way, if you have questions that I don't have the answers to, I can have them for you when the actual meeting comes. But it's a good exercise. I intend to also do that with all the members of the budget committee. I was able to do that last year, and we passed the budget on the first night, which is great. That takes the pressure off and lets the staff focus on the rest of the projects that we've got. Going back to the table each time on a budget is tough. So if we need to, we absolutely will. We've got 3 meetings to do it if that needs be. But some of that prep work in this week can help us have exactly what you guys need at that meeting if we need to make those changes. Got to do some traveling, which is always fun, not fun, right? Spent some time in Salem for the Ports Day, for Legislative Ports Day. So most of the ports was there. It was a small gathering. Legislation's in session, and so you never know who's going to show up. We had spent some time with both Bonham and Helfrich a little bit earlier in the month. Had good sit downs with them, but did get to sit down with some executive directors and talk shop a little bit, which is always good. On the top of everybody's mind was the amount PERS has gone up this year, which is something you're going to see in the budget when you guys have a chance to go through it. You'll see actual payroll is down. We've done a great job there. So we're doing more and paying less, which is fantastic from my standpoint. But you'll see that number doesn't come down quite as much as we'd like it to because PERS has gone up so much. I'm looking at some other opportunities for us to maybe mitigate that PERS increase with a side account. This would be a side account through the state of Oregon. It would be a large investment on our side. It's something you may be familiar with who've been following the school situation at all. They did this about 20 years ago. They did it with bonds. And so the last 4 or 5 years, they've been paying almost nothing in PERS, which has been fantastic for them. But in the transition of leadership, somebody forgot. And so this year, their PERS bill went up in a way that they were not expecting, hence almost a $3 million deficit. That's certainly what they have been pointing to being one of the major issues from them. So just the increase plus no real exit plan for that side account. Something we'll have to take into consideration, and we'll do that at the budget meeting. Anybody have any questions or any updates they'd like? Awesome. We are at the Governor's Tourism Conference. This is our first time attending this. I wasn't too sure that it was going to be my people, and it's not my people, but they are great people. Albert's obviously fits right in with his marketing background. Laurel from the campground got a scholarship to attend through Travel Oregon, so she's been down here and talking to everybody about her little campground and talking about our campground as well, and everyone's very excited about it. I think next year, probably the right fit for this conference would be probably Albert again, and then maybe Genevieve with her work that she's done with the chamber and tourism and just being in destination marketing in general. These are sort of her people, and they throw around a lot of terms that she's familiar with, and I am learning. But I think she'll be able to run with that. So we're excited about it. I'm likely going to be revisiting a number that you guys currently have in your budget for advertising. I actually drove that number way down. We intend to do a big advertising push every year, and then every year we kind of don't. So this year I tried to budget it more conservatively, but now I'm down here with Albert and talking to all these cool tourism people, and I'm all excited about advertising again. So maybe we'll increase it this year, or maybe this year we just figure out what the plan is to really go in all in next year. But I do certainly feel now that you guys have this in your strategic business plan that we maybe have missed an opportunity here by not pushing Cascade Locks harder from an advertising tourism standpoint. So a lot of exciting stuff and a lot of things we can do better.
I still want a billboard.
Yeah, what's really cool, and this is sort of a concept I'm kicking around. I kind of killed it when I was doing the budget because it wasn't fully baked out with you guys yet to bring it to you. But it would be really, really cool if we could do a thing where the port bought a billboard right outside of Troutdale and potentially bought one coming in from the Dalles. And they're also really pushing, I'm talking to these salespeople, and they're really pushing the airport on me. And if we bought those 3 things for a 1-year long commitment and said, for 1 year, we're going to have these billboards. And then we worked with individual businesses in town and said, okay, so this is how much we paid for the year. This is what it would cost you for 3 months. We're willing to split the cost with you. So having a way that we're shouldering a lot of the cost around advertising, but also finding a way to get the businesses involved, maybe some that would have never thought to before, or also ones that just couldn't afford it. Well, we're like, well, we'll pay half of it, right? So I know Thunder Island for a long time dominated that Troutdale billboard, and it obviously paid off for them. So it does feel like as soon as people are leaving Troutdale, the first thing they need to be seeing is exit 44. So I'm excited.
I feel like the businesses on our port property definitely need some highlighting. Just a stern wheeler and next stop a waterfront dining, stuff like that would be really cool to draw people in.
Absolutely. Well, if there's no questions, I know we've got one more thing on the agenda. I think it's a Genevieve.
Are we going to be able to vote on it?
Yes, we have a quorum.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Business action items, consider resolution 20.5-3, a resolution adopting the District of Port of Cascade Locks representation in the updates to the Hood River County Multiple Jurisdictional Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan.
Thank you,
Debbie.
Commissioner. So the county needs to update its natural hazards mitigation plan periodically in order to be eligible for FEMA funding and Oregon Emergency Management funding. Our current plan is out of date, and there's been a multi-month process to update that plan. FEMA has approved, and Oregon Emergency Management have both approved the draft plan as it is now. And at their March meeting, the Hood River County Board of Commissioners also approved the draft plan. What that means is it's now okay from them. That's our first okay to send to the rest of the jurisdictions for your approval. Once that is secured, then they can move forward to the final approval. So that is the action before you tonight. We recommend as staff your approval of this resolution.
So, well, I'd entertain a motion by somebody.
I move to approve resolution 2025-3, adopting the District of Port of Cascade Locks representation and the updates to the Hood River County multi-jurisdictional natural hazards mitigation plan.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to adopt this plan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right.
Thank you.
Having done that, now we may adjourn.
All right.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks all. Have a good one.
Thank you. Still some sunshine.
Got it.